Kelly got into the car and looked at her eyes. Nematodes had already started reproducing inside her eyeballs. It turns out that everything F said before was true. Shortly after, Kelly began to lie on the steering wheel and cry in pain. The discomfort of her body made Kelly faint on the spot. It was soon nightfall when Kelly woke up from her coma. At that moment she remembers that she hasn't picked up Zach yet. So Kelly immediately rushes over there. After arriving at the cram school, the teacher told her that Zach had been sent home by someone she had sent. Kelly was shocked to hear this because the mutated Matt was still at home. Immediately after, Kelly rushed home. Halfway through, she discovers someone who's as mutated as Matt. The two of them looked at each other, but the vampires did not attack Kelly because she had turned into a vampire herself. On the other hand, Vasily brought a tunnel layout map from home. After his investigation, there were several locations that were likely vampire nests. To further confirm, they needed to search the traffic archives online, but now the network is paralyzed, and they can't go online at all. At this time, Dutch said that the network can still be restored, but they need to enter the Stoneheart group. After hearing this, Vasily said that he had a way. He could use his identity as a mouse catcher to sneak in, and Dutch would act as his assistant. There's no time to waste, and the two immediately started their actions. After entering the Stoneheart group, they were stopped by the front desk because they did not have an appointment. Vasily started negotiating with the front desk. Surprisingly, he succeeded, and they both got on the elevator. But when the door opened, a group of bodyguards was waiting for them at the elevator entrance. Soon, Dutch was brought in front of Palmer. It turned out that their identity was exposed the moment they entered the Stoneheart group. Then, Dutch questioned Palmer why he wanted to destroy humanity. His explanation was that human life is too short, and he is now in the twilight of his life. If he dies, everything he has will no longer exist, so he wants to change the human genes to achieve immortality. After hearing this, Dutch angrily slapped Palmer because his selfishness would harm the whole world. Palmer was very angry about this and had his assistant take her away. Then the two of them were taken away by the bodyguards. Halfway through, Fitzwilliam said he would let them go because he didn't agree with Palmer's approach either. After hearing this, the two wanted them to join the demon hunting team, but Fitzwilliam said that he could not disobey Palmer's orders. Then they can only escape from here quickly. On the other side, mutated Kelly came to Diane and asked where Zach was after entering the house. Diane was heartbroken when she saw the injuries on Kelly's body, and she asked if Matt had caused them. At this moment, Diane's son came down from upstairs. By now, Kelly had turned into a vampire. Diane immediately tried to stop Kelly, but Kelly pushed her aside. In Diane's astonished gaze, she also became Kelly's prey. Kelly came to the street, where normal people saw a couple, but in Kelly's eyes, they were fresh food. Then, a voice echoed in Kelly's ears, and upon careful listening, she realized that someone was calling her. Following the voice, Kelly followed the guidance and walked to an abandoned subway station. Soon, she arrived at the deepest part, and suddenly a dark figure flashed by.
Rejoice, embrace your glorious fate.
On the other side, F arrived at Diane's house. He noticed that the door was unlocked, so he cautiously took out his gun. There was no response after calling out. So F went to the living room. He found signs of a struggle there, so F concluded that something must have happened to Diane. The vampires like to hide in dark places, so F came to the basement. He took a flashlight and shone it into the depths, and indeed found Diane and her son. At this moment, Diane heard the noise and woke up, preparing to attack F. F had no choice but to shoot her to end her suffering, and then Diane's son was also awakened. Although he didn't want to, he had to shoot him too. Afterwards, F saw something in Diane's hand. He was very familiar with this thing. It was the necklace he gave to Kelly when they got married. F couldn't bear it anymore. He started crying like a child. Soon, F returned to the antique shop. He couldn't accept that Kelly had become a vampire. At this time, Vasily and the others also came back. When F saw Dutch, she started to curse. It was all because of her that the network was paralyzed. If he had contacted Kelly earlier, she wouldn't have had an accident. Dutch was very sad about this, so she left the vampire hunting team. On the other hand, Gus escaped and returned home. When he entered the house, he smelled a pungent odor. Then Gus went to the living room and found Crispin watching a football game. Gus asked where his mother was, and the next second, Crispin slowly turned his head. Seeing that Crispin had also become a vampire, Gus slowly picked up the baseball bat next to him. Then Crispin started attacking him, and the two fought each other. Gus searched for his mother in the room and heard a sound coming from the closet. When Gus opened the closet, he found his mom lying in the closet, already turned into a vampire. Gus broke down when he saw this. Within a day, all his loved ones had turned into vampires. At this moment, he had nothing to lose, so he decided to hunt down the vampires. He encountered his vampire neighbor as soon as he reached the door, so he rushed up with an axe. Many people in this city have been transformed into vampires. If the Exorcist team wants to eliminate them completely, they must kill the Blood Ancestor. This mission is very difficult, so they must be fully prepared. Vasily even made a UV bomb, which can instantly harm a group of vampires. After everything is ready, the exorcism team is ready to set out to find the Blood Ancestor. Before that, F left Zach and Nora's mother in the antique shop. The group drove on the road and found that the streets were already in chaos. Citrakian said that this is what the Blood Ancestor wants to see. The more chaotic humans are, the easier it will be for him to rule the world. Soon everyone came to a subway station. As soon as they arrived, they smelled an unpleasant smell. It seems that Vasily's intelligence is accurate. After entering the tunnel, the surrounding area is very dark and damp, and vampires like to gather in places like this. Sure enough, Citrakian's words were quickly verified, and there were many items scattered on the ground. On the other side, Martinez stood outside the house seeking help, and Zach heard it and came over. Martinez suffers from Alzheimer's and irritability, and she ran out of cigarettes and wanted to go out and buy some. Zach asked Martinez to wait in the basement, and he went out to get some cigarettes. Soon Zach arrived at a nearby supermarket and found that there was no one inside. Then Zach came to the checkout counter and found a person lying inside, and the cigarettes were next to him. Just when Zach was about to reach out and grab it, another couple came into the supermarket. Zach quickly hid when he saw them and followed the conveyor belt to the warehouse. At this moment, Zach found a vampire sitting in the warehouse and resting. He felt scared and desperately climbed up, but his phone accidentally fell to the ground halfway. There were photos of his mother in the phone, so Zach decided to take the risk and retrieve the phone. He carefully jumped down from the conveyor belt and proceeded cautiously. When Zach got the phone, it was already broken. What was even more frightening was that he found that the vampire had disappeared. Zach started climbing desperately upwards, and he finally climbed out of the warehouse safely. Then Zach immediately ran outside. Just as he reached the door, he bumped into the couple who had just entered. The man thought Zach was hiding something good, so he curiously walked into the warehouse. Just when Zach thought he couldn't escape, he unexpectedly met Gus. Gus heard the screams coming from the warehouse and went there with an axe. Zach immediately fled the scene, not forgetting to take the cigarettes for Martinez. On the other side, Citrakian came to the depths of the tunnel, where they found hundreds of resting vampires. Upon seeing this, Vasily wanted to step forward and kill them all, but Citrakian stopped him. He said that if they alerted them, the Blood Ancestor would notice, so they needed to walk past slowly. Because these vampires are newly mutated, they need to rest to restore their physical strength. As long as there wasn't too much noise, they wouldn't wake up, and in the end, they passed by without incident. Then the group continued to walk deeper, but suddenly a vampire came slowly from the front. Vasily took out a silver nail gun, but Citrakian stopped him, saying that they couldn't expose themselves yet. Just when everyone didn't know what to do, the vampire accidentally stepped on a high-voltage wire. They found a new weakness of the vampires. Then the group continued to walk inside and found a lot of green sticky substance on the ground. But the strange thing is that there is no road ahead at all. F shone his flashlight over and found that the vampires had dug a passage. Citrakian said it might be a trap. After hearing this, F put the ultraviolet lamp aside and crawled into the hole. The hole was very narrow, and F quickly crawled out of the hole. He then signaled that everyone could come over, but at that moment, a couple of bloods came from the back. Vasily tells the two of them to crawl through while he holds them off. Citrakian starts to go through the cave, and just as he's about to exit, F hears Kelly's voice. Even though Citrakian says it's a trap, F follows the voice. Nora's side is fighting off the Strigoi, but they're getting outnumbered. Vasily tells Nora to crawl over to him while he cleans up the rest of the Strigoi. When he was done, Vasily quickly went into the hole. At first it went well, but when he reached the entrance of the hole, Vasily got stuck because of his size. At that moment, the Strigoi were already crawling over. Nora saw this and dragged Vasily out. Just in the nick of time, Vasily was successfully pulled out. The two of them could not see F, so they could only go inside first. At this moment, F had already arrived at the Blood Ancestor's lair. Then he lifted the lid of the coffin as if he was crazy, but there was nothing inside. At that moment, F realized that he was surrounded by hordes of bloods. Suddenly a huge figure fell from the sky. This was the first time he saw the true face of Blood Ancestor. F saw this and launched an attack directly, but he was no match for the Blood Ancestor. Even if he uses weapons, it will have no effect. Then the Blood Ancestor slowly spit out the stinger. At this time, Citrakian appeared in time and interrupted the Blood Ancestor. Then Vasily and Nora came over, and he threw a UV bomb. After pressing the switch, all vampires began to be exposed to ultraviolet rays. The Blood Ancestor also took advantage of the chaos to escape from here. It was only then that everyone realized that this was all a trap for the Blood Ancestor. He had lured them here, but Citrakian has lost his mind at this point, and he questions Vasily about why he dropped the UV bomb, thus allowing the Blood Ancestor to escape. Citrakian then took a hammer and started smashing the coffin relentlessly. He swore to kill every last vampire. After venting his anger, Citrakian continued leading everyone further inside. Nora tried to persuade him not to act impulsively, but Citrakian had clearly lost his sanity. Soon, they discovered an extremely deep cave. Vasily threw an illumination flare inside. What they saw next was beyond belief. Countless vampires were gathered inside, but Citrakian showed no fear. He grabbed his sword and prepared to charge, but Vasily immediately stopped him. He pointed out that facing so many vampires, going in would mean death. They quickly pulled Citrakian away.